My people, let me continue where I left off. Thank you for taking time to listen to me as I go crazy. And maybe you'll go crazy with me. As I continue this story of the emperor, perhaps the most painful realization that has gradually dawned upon me is that the emperor rarely governs alone. The emperor seldom survives solely because of the strength of the emperor. Systems of domination rarely endure merely because they possess superior armies, they possess wealth, they possess institutions or technologies. But I've realized that they endure because they are administered. They endure because they are normalized. They endure because they are defended. They endure because they recruit managers from the victims. Managers that they elevate, they reward, and become good managers on their behalf. They endure because they manufacture gatekeepers. They endure because they cultivate beneficiaries. And the greatest tragedy is that they endure because some amongst us, some amongst the captured, eventually becomes custodians of the very systems that captured them. This observation is perhaps more uncomfortable than any criticism directed at external powers, because it compels us to look inward instead of outwards. It compels us to examine ourselves. It compels us to ask difficult questions about those we entrust with leadership. Politicians see these realities. They live these realities. Academics see these realities. They live these realities. Business people see these realities. They live these realities. Religious leaders see these realities. They live these realities. Human rights activists see these realities and they live these realities. Opinion makers see these realities and they live these realities. Those who present themselves as experts on global affairs understands these realities. Yet far too many appear content managing the symptoms while avoiding the deeper causes. Too many speak passionately about transformation while preserving inherited arrangements. Too many promise change while administering continuity. Too many occupy positions of influence only to become protectors of structures they were once expected to dismantle. Too many have become comfortable within systems built upon inequality. Too many have become skilled interpreters of injustice rather than courageous challengers of injustice. Too many have accepted invitations to dine at tables they were once expected to overturn. Too many have confused access with liberation. Too many have mistaken representation for transformation. Too many have mistaken participation in inherited systems for ownership of those systems. And perhaps that is one of the emperor's greatest achievements. The emperor no longer needs to rule directly. The emperor increasingly governs through intermediaries, through those who reassure people that patience is always required, through those who insult and insist that difficult conversations must forever be postponed, through those who tell the poor to lower their expectations, through those who speak endlessly about stability while inequality deepens, through those who preach reconciliation without restoration, through those who celebrate inclusion while structural exclusion remains intact, through those who invoke constitutionalism selectively, through those who condemn injustice when committed by some, yet rationalize it when committed by others, through those who have become more concerned with protecting institutions than ensuring that institutions protect people. My people, leadership was never intended to become a profession of comfort. Leadership was never intended to become a gateway to privilege. Leadership was never intended to become an exercise of public relations. Leadership was never intended to become a performance. Leadership was not intended to disturb complacency. Leadership was intended to challenge entrenched interest. Leadership was intended to tell uncomfortable truths, unpalatable truth. Leadership was intended to expand the moral imagination of society. Leadership was intended to place justice above convenience. Leadership was intended to speak honestly, even when honesty carries personal costs. And perhaps this is why many ordinary people increasingly feel politically homeless. They observe leaders speaking the language of liberation while practicing the politics of accommodation. They observe leaders condemning historical injustice while appearing reluctant to confront its contemporary manifestations. They observe their leaders promising accountability while shielding one another from accountability. They observe leaders condemning corruption while simultaneously normalizing impunity. They observe leaders celebrating democracy while citizens increasingly unheard, unseen, and disconnected from the decisions that profoundly affect their lives. This is not to suggest that every leader is compromised. This is not to suggest that every institution is irredeemable. This is not to suggest that every person entrusted with authority has abandoned principle. Rather, this is to suggest that societies mature when they possess the courage to critically examine their own custodians. For no people can genuinely aspire to liberate while treating leaders as untouchables. No society can meaningfully transform itself while fearing criticisms of those who govern in its name. No generation can fulfill its historical responsibilities by outsourcing its conscience to politicians or to academics or to clerics or to commentators or to business elites or to religious leaders. As free people, we cannot merely consume leadership. As free people, we should not merely consume leadership. A free people must constantly and consistently evaluate leadership. A conscious people must constantly and consistently question leadership. And an intellectually independent people must reserve the right to withdraw confidence from those who promise transformation while preserving the architecture of stagnation. For perhaps the greatest illusion ever, I hear myself when I say this, perhaps the greatest illusion ever sold to capture people in this, it is that liberation can be permanently delegated. It is that consciousness can be outsourced. It is that dignity can be donated. It is that justice can be gifted. It is that freedom can be administered from above. I don't have monopoly over facts, but I know that history teaches us otherwise. History teaches us that genuine transformation begins when ordinary people reclaim ownership of their minds, reclaim ownership of their memories, reclaim ownership of their institutions, and most importantly, reclaim ownership of their futures. And perhaps that is precisely what the emperor fears the most. Not angry people, not noisy people, not distracted people, but conscious people. People who think, people who study, people who organize, people who remembers. People who refuse to participate in spectacle designed to keep them permanently entertained while history quietly repeats itself. This is what or who the emperor greatly fears. I think what we need is the greatest awakening. The greatest awakening of our conscience, of accountability, reparative justice, and the courage to leave the circus. That is where I'm going with this. We need to get out